Welcome to Firstline, I'm Daniel Pizarro. A shocking video emerged this week of two Bankstown Hospital nurses making anti-Semitic and racist abuse towards an Israeli influencer. While police are investigating the matter, the question of how to combat anti-Semitism in Australia continues. Earlier, I spoke to Labor Upper House member Stephen Lawrence about how he would like to see anti-Semitism combated. Mr. Lawrence, welcome to Firstline. It's good to see you again.
Hi, Daniel. Good to be with you.
Now, the incident at Bankstown Airport is just one of a growing concern of anti-Semitic events that's happened in New South Wales. We've had many last week and over the past couple of months, but this particular video was absolutely shocking. And I know that you gave a big speech in the Legislative Council condemning the two nurses who spoke to this Israeli influencer. When you saw the video, what went through your head?
Yeah, I should just clarify, Daniel. I actually didn't mention that video in my speech because it was on the same day that the video broke. I spoke and condemned anti-Semitic attacks and so forth, but I wasn't actually referring to that video. But yeah, look, when I watched that video, as the words progressed and came out of their mouths, I found it chilling and extraordinary. And the government's acted really quickly in response to it. I think the two nurses have been stood down. I know the police are investigating the matter, seeking the full video. And obviously, from the point of view of a police investigation, all evidence, all context matters. So don't want to comment, I suppose, too much more on it in light of that police investigation, except to say that, self-evidently it was appalling and unacceptable. And anything that undermines public confidence in our health system is very troubling on that front alone.
Looking at a policy and a legal standpoint, what should be done really to combat anti-Semitism? We know that there has been various laws on a state and federal level, though there has been some concerns about how effective these could be, but also targeting those with legitimate free speech or just asking questions kind of perspective.
Look, I think fundamentally everybody knows that the best way to combat racism, anti-Semitism, all forms of prejudice and discrimination is to build social cohesion, to come together as a community, to dispel racist myths and narratives and stereotypes, and that really the future of our community in these respects really rests on those things, the building blocks of social cohesion. Law is part of the picture, and the government is responding. And of course, people will probably have seen reported that the government has introduced bills that are aimed at increasing penalties in some respects for property damage on synagogues and other places of significance to the Jewish community, aimed at regulating protests in the vicinity of places of religious worship. And the Premier has also spoken about an intention to introduce legislation to create a hate speech offence. So, look, all of those things are happening, and legislative reform is definitely part of the picture. But the fundamental task of combating racism, I think, lies with us all. And, of course, it also depends what specifically is occurring, what's the cause of what's occurring, in order to formulate the appropriate responses. And there's obviously lots of investigations going on at the moment about particularly the spate of anti-Semitic attacks. And going forward, I think the strategy is going to depend on the findings from those matters as well, because one of the really disturbing and unusual aspects of this spate of recent attacks is that the 10 or 12 people arrested in relation to a number of them on the police statements that have been made publicly apparently don't seem to have themselves personally an anti-Semitic motivation. Rather, they may well have been paid to do it. And the National Cabinet on media reporting has been briefed in relation to the possibility of foreign interference, foreign actors, whether state or non-state, orchestrating these attacks in Australia. And people that have looked at some of the overseas issues going on, particularly in Western Europe, are going to be aware that there's been a similar pattern of events in Europe and other places, and some pretty cogent reporting going on attributing that to the Russian state potentially, and this feeding into some geopolitical issues. So obviously that's way above my pay grade in terms of understanding those matters, but the cause of these things needs to be understood in order to best combat them. But of course, the fundamental cause of anti-Semitic attacks is anti-Semitism, even if there's some people out there seeking to take advantage of anti-Semitism to weaponise it politically and so forth. So look, it's not a simple matter, but social cohesion, the building of social cohesion, laws where appropriate, investigations to tackle the causes, and then responses based on the evidence of those investigations.
It's quite disturbing, as you mentioned, that there could be this foreign interference. And given the fact that we also have social media being one of the most prevalent features of our society now, a single post, a single video, a single photo that can go around the world in a matter of seconds. And then we also have essentially everything that's going around with these various attacks, and people I find quite disturbingly things on Twitter, for example, who have posted videos or footage or calling for Jewish people to be wiped out, the state of Israel to be wiped out, in the same way that there have been calls for Gazans to be wiped out at the same time. Social media seems to have also amplified what we're seeing. And in fact, of course, this video that we saw is from an Israeli influencer who's very well known on TikTok, and he used the chat roulette feature as well. So social media has really exacerbated the situations that we are in now.
Yeah, look, I think it's having a lot of contradictory impacts. I mean, basically, it's increasing the ability of people all over the world to connect with each other. In the olden days, which aren't that long ago, but we used to all get our information pretty much from the same or similar sources. There was a common understanding on things and a common channel of information coming to us. In the modern time, since the advent of the internet revolution, we have many disparate sources of information, some reliable, some totally unreliable. We have misinformation and disinformation that can be disseminated in real time and influence social and political events. We've seen things like the terrible race riots recently in the UK, apparently fueled and spread by social media and different communication apps. But it's contradictory because we see social movements, and I'm thinking, for example, of the Arab Spring about a decade ago now, but many since, where people have been able to unite and mobilise and share information in quite progressive ways and causes. And then there's the whole issue of ownership of social media and the pulling of strings, I suppose, behind the scenes to suit the agendas of certain people. So look, it's a really complex thing, and I think education is key because we're not going to turn back the tide of social media. And with the advent of artificial intelligence, the risk of disinformation and misinformation influencing events in real time in a pernicious way is ever more real and not going away. So we need to educate our young people, educate our community to be cautious and skeptical on information and not act upon information so readily as we might, because we are hardwired to trust. That's one of the things about human beings. We're hardwired to trust.
You are, of course, a member of the Labour Friends of Palestine group, and that, of course, have been incredibly sympathetic to the rights of Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza Strip, whether they be Muslim, Christian, Druze, whatever. At the same time, however, there has been this increase in anti-Semitic rhetoric disguised as political activism. And I think that's one of the biggest issues that we are seeing. I know that there have been many people who are saying that they are supporting the Palestinians or are against the Israeli government, but in fact have been either spouting anti-Semitic tropes, or their main reason is that they want to get rid of the state of Israel, either like a one-state solution or anything like that. How do you balance advocating for the Palestinian people while ensuring that you're not involved or you're trying to douse any anti-Semitic or conspiratorial people? Because that's one of the biggest problems I know that those in the pro-Palestinian camp have been dealing with, especially those who are rightly concerned about the IDF, the rhetoric from former Israeli ministers on the far right, as well as concerns over Donald Trump's actions and discussions. Do you understand where I'm coming from?
Oh, absolutely. Look, it's a really, really important question. Look, I'm an active member of Parliamentary Friends of Palestine, also Labor Friends of Palestine. I actually spent some time living in Ramallah in the West Bank, helping to set up a public defender system over there. And so I learnt over there, I suppose, grew to understand the sequence of events that started, I guess, in the middle of the last century. The Balfour Declaration, I guess the coming into the mainstream of the Zionist movement, the terrible events of World War II and the Holocaust, and then what happened after World War II, the formation of the state of Israel, the displacement of so many Palestinian people, the events of 1967, and then you move forward, of course, Oslo, all that's happened since. And look, I'm a lawyer. I'm someone that believes in human rights and the rule of law, and have chosen to associate myself with those two particular groups, not because I picked a side or I'm pro-Palestinian. I'm pro-human rights and the rule of law, and that's always a perspective that I've sought to impart. I think it's incredibly important to distinguish between legitimate criticisms of Israel and anti-Semitism. So if you're talking about, for example, the protest movement in support of the Palestinian people that's developed in Australia since October 7, led by Jewish people and others, the protest encampments at the University of Sydney, for example, have a substantial involvement of Jewish people. And indeed, I have many Jewish friends that are not Zionists. Of course, many, many Jewish people are, but it is incredibly important to distinguish between those two things, because to take a monolithic view about the Jewish community, to assume that, for example, they all support all of the actions of the State of Israel, that can be anti-Semitism in and of itself, of a form. But you are absolutely right, Daniel, and particularly online, I've seen many, many examples of anti-Semitism disguised as criticism of Israel, of virulent anti-Semitic tropes and stereotypes being fed into the social media narrative through criticisms of Israel. I don't think that it happens as much in the protest movements that have taken place in Sydney. I certainly have witnessed it a lot on social media. But look, the pro-Palestine activists who I've met, including Jewish people, and talked about these issues with, are keenly aware of this need to distinguish between those two things and to make sure that anti-Semitism and bad actors don't come in the back door, I suppose, and infiltrate that movement. But that has, of course, occurred, and there was anti-Semitic things chanted by a smaller group of people that arrived at the Opera House as part of that protest that occurred back in 2023. So you cannot deny these things. You need to bring principle to the fore. But on the other side of the equation, nor can you accept broad sweeping generalisations saying that the pro-Palestine protests that have been occurring weekly are anti-Semitic. The encampments at the universities are in a carte blanche way anti-Semitic. I think that does an incredible disservice to people involved in those things and to the Jewish community, representatives and members of whom are involved in those things. So it's a fraught issue, and one needs to be circumspect as a politician and careful in how you engage, careful in the language that you use, and always put to the fore those fundamental questions of human rights and human dignity. And that applies to everyone, to Jewish people, to Palestinian people, to all people.
And I know that there has been, especially quite recently, accusations among some people of the media and academics and politicians that if some of them have been speaking out regarding whether or not they're criticising the Benjamin Netanyahu government, the IDF, or they're speaking about the plight of those particularly in Gaza, that there has been accusations of a coordinated attempt to try and silence these voices. And I know that to a fact that this is also damaging to the Jewish community, who will be caught up in these same accusations. As you says, it's not a monolithic culture, and as soon as we know, we've got the case of Antoinette Lattouf. There's a Macquarie University professor that has that is under fire for. I mean, some of her tweets I have seen have been very poor, but others are relatively mild by context. But it seems that this situation, regardless of what you are saying or even when you're discussing facts, you're either going to be accused of being pro-Israel or pro-Palestine, so pro-genocide, to put that into quotations, or pro-Zionist. This is this discussion is something that it almost instantly devolves.
I think that's true, and I think that's why, as a politician, the focus needs to be on principle and to try to withstand and to neutralise misleading and unhelpful political narratives that will always be deployed by people that have strong views and political objectives quite legitimately. Some people might represent them as a lobby on one side or the other. But fundamentally, people of all views and all communities are entitled to form groups and advocate for their cause. Their community members will do that too. And it's up to government, I guess, to listen to all of that, to synthesise all of that, and to act in a principled way with a focus on social cohesion in Australia. Because, the Premier, when he said that we can't solve the problems of the Middle East, that's absolutely true as a state government, and everything we need to do needs to have that focus on social cohesion. And I think that means being vigilantly even-handed and principled in the way that we deal with these issues, because they bleed into our community. They can cause communal tensions in our community, and our government needs to be the honest broker, accept the limitations of our role, and always have that focus on social cohesion and building it, because that's the true guarantee against these things spilling into Australia. And they have spilled into Australia of late, and it's been shocking to see this spate of attacks, and we need to fully understand all the causes and be in the best position to make sure that this does not happen again.
Well, as we've just heard from Stephen Lawrence, the need to tackle anti-Semitism isn't just a concern for the Jewish community. Many of Australia's Muslim community members have openly condemned the Bankstown Hospital video, including Dr. Ata Rehman. He is the chairperson of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Medical Association of Australia, and he joins me now for his perspective and to discuss how the Muslim community has been responding to the video. Dr. Rehman, thank you very much for joining us. I know that this must be a very shocking time for you and the Muslim medical community of Australia after seeing this video. First, when you heard about it and then saw it, what went through your head?
When I first saw that video, which was sent to my friends in the morning, I was really shocked. Working in this profession for the last 30 years, I can't believe that, when the patient come to us, we don't look at their religion. We just treat him as a patient who need our help, as a part of my professional duty to make sure I can provide him best help to save his life. So we never thought about even harming the patient or making anything bad to patient. In fact, we try our best to help the patient. And looking at that video shocked me, and I can't still believe that this has happened.
It has certainly been a viral moment, and we know that developments are still ongoing. We did receive word just now that one of those particular doctors is currently in medical care due to concern for his welfare. However, the situation really has shocked a lot of people, given the fact that these were two nurses in Bankstown Hospital who you would expect, as we have the Hippocratic Oath, who took that vow to save, look after, treat, be there for people regardless of, as your organisation says, regardless of race, gender, beliefs or anything else. But to hear what those two people said, to outwardly calling for Israelis to be in hell, and some of them even more shockingly claiming that they had killed patients already, this must have been an absolute punch to the stomach for you.
Oh, definitely. There's no doubt about that. Look, as the Quran says, save one life means you can save the human being, save the mankind. So looking at this teaching, the beautiful teaching of Islam, where we talk about saving one life means saving the whole mankind, and then even thinking of killing someone is definitely a kick in the gut, definitely. And, in Islam, we treat the teaching we have from Ahmadiyya Muslim Medical Association of Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat is to treat everybody with love, affection, and without race, religion, or their gender. And that's what the motto of our organization is, as love for all, hatred for none.
At the moment, is there concern within the Muslim community that you are a part of? Is there any concern that you could now be faced with your own verbal, physical attacks or threats directed towards your community, especially as tensions have been running high with an increase in anti-Semitic attacks across Australia?
Oh, look, there is always an issue about these anti-Semitic racism effects, But I guess with my teaching as a Muslim, what my teaching told me is that not to harm anyone and treat everybody with love and affection. So I think once people know that we are not in that frame of mind where we have to harm someone and treat everybody with respect and love, I'm sure we can able to resolve this very high, issues what's going on.
You have also voiced your absolute condemnation of the anti-Semitic attacks, and we've had quite a few in Australia, and they have picked up, of course, since October 7th, 2023. What is your concerns about what this could mean for Australia? Because some of these attacks have included death threats to politicians. Someone unveiled a swastika flag in Sydney the other week. We've had the Bankstown Hospital video as well. And then we have the comments and retweets on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, which has already inflamed the situation.
Yeah, look, I think this is very sad to hear all this, what's happening around us. And as we know that this happening every day, and it's a definitely concern for everyone. Australia is a multicultural society. I came from Pakistan 26 years ago. This is my house. This is my nation. This is my home now. And then we are living a much better life in Australia than we are living before. So I think we all have, and a lot of people who came here as refugees, and then Australia as a home. We have to look at what Australia gave it to us, and we need to look at it that what sort of society we are creating for our children. So we have to think very carefully and look at all these things to tell people and to raise awareness among the population or the masses that we're living in a much multicultural society where everybody should treat everyone with love and affection.
And I know that given Australia is a multicultural society, when things like what's been happening between Hamas and Gaza even though they're thousands of kilometers away, when it hits close to home, these tensions can really rise. And we have seen, tragically, of course, attacks and threats, as we have mentioned. What do you think the Muslim community, from your perspective, can do in maybe helping to try and diffuse the situation? Have you reached out to any Jewish organizations or anyone from the Israeli community to say that this video is not representative of Australian Muslims?
Actually, absolutely right. I did have few friends and I did talk to them as well. In fact, about 2 years ago, one of the Israeli newspaper, he came to look at my work and they published a big article about my work. And they said, oh, we should be in a friendship. And we're still friends. And I think I talked to him as well. And I said, look, I'm not representing this sort of views what someone else mentioned, and don't blame me for that. I'm still your friend and we are still a very good friends. So it's nothing to do with, I think it's very personal comments for some people. It's not a comment of the masses.
And I guess, Dr. Rehman, as you mentioned at the start, a verse from the Quran, I think in some ways also when people take out or look at certain passages of the Quran, there's a lot of skepticism towards what you just say, Islam is a religion of peace, but at the same time, we've also had people who have used the Quran as the justification for kufirs to be, attacked or killed, or anyone that they regard as an infidel. Why is it, from you? And I know this is a very deep question. Why are we seeing this difference? Because it is very difficult sometimes to know from one side where you could say it's a religion of peace and the vast majority of Muslims we know are peace-loving people, but at the same time we also have these other aspects ranging from Muslim fundamentalists to governments like Iran or more conservative movements who have used those same Quran passages for either violence or to take action against other people. Can you understand what I'm getting at?
Yeah, look, I think, that's why Ahmadiyya Muslim organization is different from other organizations. And our motto, as I mentioned before, is love for all, hatred for none. The interpretation of Quran, what other Muslims do, we don't agree with that. We treat everybody with respect and love, and we don't facilitate violence or in any way to harm anyone, So I think this is a wrong interpretation of Islamic teaching by some of the fundamentalists who believe that what they believe is right. But as an Ahmadiyya Muslim organization, we don't have this belief and we don't believe in any violence against anyone.
And of course, speaking of your organization, the AMMAA, you have done a lot of humanitarian work, not just in Australia, but overseas in the Pacific as well as on the Asian continent. And no doubt, of course, you have you've got people on the ground who know the situation going on in the state of Israel, Gaza, the West Bank. From what you're hearing at the moment, what is the situation, if you can tell me that?
Look, I think definitely the situation in Gaza is not very good. They need a lot of humanitarian services. And the Humanity First, which is the big organization, a part of Ahmadiyya organization, is working to help them as much as we can. But I don't have much contact with them at this stage because Humanity First in a larger scale is doing that. It's difficult to go at this stage to go to Gaza. But in the future, when the condition gets better, we are there to help people. And that's not only Muslim, it's anyone. And as I mentioned, that we work in many countries, like in Vanuatu, in Solomon Islands, in part of Africa. It's not a matter of Muslim. It's a human beings. So in fact, we provide many medical equipment to hospitals in different parts of the world, including Solomon Island. In Australia, we are working for the fur relief, for other things as well. So many things we do, and we never thought about. We feel that this is our home, and we are here to help our fellow country being.
And finally, Dr. Rehman, as a message to the Jewish community, as you've said, you've condemned this video that has appeared, and of course, there's a lot of tension still within the community. what would you like to say to your fellow Jewish compatriots of Australia?
Look, I think I have many Jewish friends as well, and we are doctors together. We're working together for a long time, and we never thought about that. I'm sure when we talk together, and I think I reaffirm my statement that look, we are friends, and we never thought about what it was said in the video, and we don't. This is not a teaching of Islam at all, and they know that. Most of the people know that this is not a teaching of Islam. It's an interpretation by only few people, which we don't agree.
Dr. Rehman, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Dr. Ata Rehman, chairperson of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Medical Association of Australia there. Donald Trump has claimed this week that South Africa's Afrikaner population face a genocide and has offered them asylum. But the reality on the ground tells a very different story. Most Afrikaners have rejected the offer, and claims of any persecution is highly disputed. To help separate fact from fiction, I'm joined live from Gauteng in South Africa, Professor Christo van der Rheede from the FW de Klerk Foundation. Well, Mr. van der Rheede, thank you very much for joining us here on Firstline. I know that Donald Trump's claim of genocide against Afrikaners has been widely disputed. Can you clarify the real situation that's going on in South Africa? Because President Trump's comments have really drawn a lot of ire as well as bemusement and even confusion.
I can confirm, as I sit here, there is no genocide against white farmers. We have a criminal crime problem in South Africa, and all of us, my community, the white community, the colored community, the black community, all of our communities are affected by crime. So I want to stress that point. There's no genocide. Secondly, there is also no confiscation of white farmers' land in South Africa. Yes, we have land invasion in urban areas because people are migrating from rural areas to urban areas. People are desperate, and that is something that our government really need to act upon, because where's the urban planning to ensure that people have proper housing? But I can assure you there is no land confiscation. And thirdly, there's also no trampling on the rights of any cultural group in South Africa. That we have affirmative action laws that I do not support. I'm dead set against it. I want our state apparatus to be based on meritocracy, but there is no trampling on anyone's rights. In fact, white people dominate the business sectors, they dominate the employment figures. So it is not true that there is this large-scale ostracization of white people in South Africa.
Because a lot of this also stems from that white genocide conspiracy theory that has been battered about among usually far-right and extremists and neo-Nazis online, and some politicians even have uttered that conspiracy theory, even here in Australia, and it has been incredibly controversial for people to be speaking about this. Where exactly do you believe this conspiracy theory came from?
We've seen that there's a lot of criminals who target farms. But remember, it is not only farms that are owned by white people, it's also farms owned by black people. And because our police ministry before the government of national unity was not really up to the task, and we had a lot of corrupt police that are not competent at the task, and the doing away of very, very important task teams within the police force, that crime has really gotten out of hand in South Africa. And farms become easy targets because we have desperate people out there who target farmers in the belief that there is either food on those farms, there's money on those farms, there are weapons on those farms. That's why many of those farmers have been targeted. But when I was the CEO of Agri-SA, we've established what we would call Agri-Securitas. So we've collected money, we've established a lot of camera systems. We put up camera systems. We have established control rooms. We have worked hand in hand with the police force, etc., and the community policing forum, and with other state-owned entities, because criminals didn't not only target farmers, but they also targeted Eskom, who's a big electricity supplier, to steal the copper cables. They've also targeted the railway system because for copper and for other valuables. So yes, we've got a serious crime problem in South Africa, but not genocide.
Now, looking at Donald Trump's offer, do you think that in his own mind, this is a genuine humanitarian gesture, or is it more about like signaling to his political base or trying to rile up certain groups of people?
We are very, very worried about the fact that a specific group calling themselves Afrikaners, and I want to emphasize the term Afrikaner way back referred to people of mixed origin. It was my people that could no longer associate with either Europe or with India, where our forefathers came from, that embraced the term Afrikaner. And at that stage, it was equivalent to the English term African. We are now from Africa, and that's why we call ourselves Afrikaner. Over time, it has been appropriated, and I wrote a very strong letter advising against this tendency to again reserve the term Afrikaner just for white people. For me, the term Afrikaner should be all-embracing. It should also focus on uniting our people as opposed to dividing them, again, on the basis of color, because there's no distinction between my culture, my language, and that of people who call themselves Afrikaners. We're all religious, we're all Christian, we all speak Afrikaans, we all enjoy rugby, all enjoy the same cultural food and stuff like that. It is unfortunately that apartheid has driven that wedge between white Afrikaans and colored Afrikaans and black Afrikaans people. If it wasn't for apartheid, it would have been a completely different scenario.
And we're still, of course, seeing the effects of apartheid, even though it's been officially gone over 30 years ago. There has been, as we were speaking off air, a lot of economic and social progress that was made from Nelson Mandela and FW de Klerk, as well as even Thabo Mbeki. But we know at the moment that, especially when Mr. Mbeki, even though he was controversial regarding his stance on things like AIDS and aspects like that, when Jacob Zuma came in, South Africa did seem to really go backwards economically. And there was also this kind of, from my perspective, a lot of uncomfortable black nationalism that really that tried to really emphasize his own backgrounds. And we also saw the controversies for like Julius Malema from the economic freedom fighters and all that. So it looks like that South Africa, from an ANC-controlled Jacob Zuma party, was becoming increasingly divisive and polarizing. And this has really damaged South Africa politically, economically, socially, and even culturally.
Indeed, tribalism in South Africa, whether it comes from the extreme right-wing Afrikaner groupings, or whether it comes from ethnic Zulu ethnic nationalism or Xhosa ethnic nationalism, or even colored ethnic nationalism, are dangerous things. We don't need that in South Africa. Our constitution makes it very clear. It talks about non-racialism. We are not denying anyone's cultural rights and cultural orientation. In fact, Afrikaners in South Africa today enjoy cultural rights like never before. We've seen a lot of Afrikaans festivals. I'm the chairperson of the KAK&K, one of the biggest Afrikaans festivals in South Africa. One day, when you're in Australia, when you come and visit us, come and join us there. We have seen massive amount of people going to the Voortrekker Monument. So it is blatant nonsense that people's cultural rights are being trampled upon. What I want to emphasize is that our constitution is premised on three building blocks. It talks about, one, human dignity. In other words, all of us have to ensure that our people lead a dignified life. Secondly, it talks about equality. How do we create equal opportunities for everyone in South Africa? And thirdly, it talks about human rights. How do we respect the human rights of everyone? And that's why I'm the first one to say that due to state capture, during the Zuma years, we have seen how our constitution has been eroded. Those values has been eroded. Has our constitution been completely disregarded? And no wonder we are in a very bad place in terms of those three fundamental building blocks that we were supposed to make a reality for all South Africans. And yes, I'm the first one who want to call on my own government today. And in my writings, I pursue that every day. I said, stop with these blunt instruments called employment equity. Let us introduce meritocracy, because we have used blunt instruments, within the affirmative action space that no longer really focus on how do we overcome the social injustice of the past, but it has really become blunt instruments used by the ANC to ensure that people continue to vote for them. It has been used for cadre employment and deployment. No wonder our people are suffering at grassroots level. We've seen municipalities completely imploding. I've just, drive through Johannesburg to a colored area where schools are half built, entrepreneurs that are blatantly corrupt, that rather put the money in their back pockets instead of turning or doing the things that will improve the lives of South Africans, and many other blunt instruments that are really not benefiting. Because if you use incompetent people, you appoint people on the basis of color, of the ethnicity, of the tribal group, you are not going to appoint the very best people to address the shortcomings and the socio-economic challenges that we face. And for that, I'm the first one to stand up and say no to my government. You must stop this. And we've been calling it. We've been taking government to court about these type of actions, because South Africa has changed. We have moved from a world where we were classified according to color to a world where young people don't know it anymore. There's mixed marriages. How are you going to describe a kid whose father is white and whose mother is black? And some of those kids are some of our best rugby players. They have ensured that we've beaten New Zealand. And I think we've beaten you as well, but I won't go there.
Yes, that will be neither here nor there. Although if you do beat New Zealand, I think we are quite happy about that. And of course, we definitely can see the social cohesion when South Africa won the Rugby World Cup in 1995, which was a massive healing moment for so many people. And I'm particularly interested in your opinion regarding the current government of South Africa. It's the government of national unity after the ANC lost its majority and the Democratic Alliance has gotten into government. And we also have, of course, some of the interestingly, like the parties like Freedom Front Plus, which has its roots in the Afrikaner movement and who has formed governments with the ANC. We had Peter Muller being a minister and all that. So given the fact that we are having these multi-party elections, we have this government of national unity at the moment under Cyril Ramaphosa, and the Freedom Front Plus has been still doing quite well in elections. What is your take on how that government has actually been going since it was created last year?
The government has been going quite well. I'm very impressed with some of the DA ministers like Leon Schreiber, also Minister Marube, also other ministers, Steenhuisen in agriculture. So the DA within the national government hold key portfolios. And for that, we need to support them. I also know Dean McPherson, who's done remarkable work. So we are very proud of our government of national unity. Then also Gayton McKenzie, who's Minister of Arts and Culture and Sports. We've also seen Mr. Groenewald from the Freedom Front Plus, Dr. Groenewald, doing a great job And then there's a few ANC ministers who is also doing well. And then there's others, obviously, that are not doing well. So if we lose the government of national unity, we're going to give the Africanist parties, such as the EFF and the MK party under Jacob Zuma, the opportunity to step into that void. And then all hell will break loose. That I can assure you, because they are not interested in a constitutional system that we have currently. They got no respect for the constitution. They want a government that is based on parliamentary sovereignty, like we've had pre-1994, where the state president can make an announcement. At least at this point in time, we have a parliament, we have an executive, and we have a judiciary. And they need to hold each other accountable. And it's because we have failed to hold each other accountable. That's why we have seen this mess after 30 years in South Africa. And you know what? Our constitution provides the blueprint. If you read our constitution, if you read our Bill of Rights, everything is clearly explained in terms of what we need to achieve a South Africa that is prosperous, peaceful, that is really serving the interests of South Africa. If we follow that blueprint and we manage our country well, because our country is at a point where things are looking the way they look because of mismanagement. And, you know, they hide behind ideological positionings. Like, no, we need to, some, you know, promote socialism, others make pronouncements about Marxism, and obviously others capitalism. And that's part of the bigger confusion. There's no, especially within the ANC, and that's why I'm disappointed in President Ramaphosa, that he could not clearly, you know, give direction in terms of what should be the ideological position of the ANC. At least within the DA, they are very clear. They stand for free markets, they stand for this and that. Ramaphosa, yes, he in his previous State of the Nation address recently, he emphasized all of those things that the DA is professing. But some of his party members are against, dead set against it. And what is the reason for that? Because they want control of the state so that they can hand out tenders to their bodies, that they can fleece the state. And what we are saying is we want public-private partnerships so that we stop state graft, we stop you know, non-delivery, and that we work towards a South Africa that is really based on the principles of a constitutional democracy that benefits everyone. And
this also is also in the context that after Donald Trump made this announcement regarding offering Afrikaners but the political asylum, the AfriForum organization and the Iranian movement said, no, we don't. We appreciate the gesture, but our homeland is in South Africa. We are Afrikaners. We want to live in South Africa. And I know that the Iranian group itself is often a source of fascination and criticism. We know that certain more extremists within the ANC and the EFF want the entire town to be completely taken over and removed of its autonomy. Looking at the Iranian movement and what AfriForum and the town of Irania itself, what is your take on that community? Because many people are going there that if they meet the criteria, of course, if they speak Afrikaans there and they're part of the Calvinist religious movement. But a lot of people have been going there because it's a safe place. But we do know that to a certain extent, there is a little bit of that racism that still stems from the old apartheid days.
I am, you know, all of those criteria that you've mentioned applies to me 100%. And in many cases, even more so, when I compare myself with some of the white folks that are staying there. But why wouldn't they allow me? And that's exactly what you are referring to. But the bigger question for me is, they have established Urania. They live there in peace. Nobody is coming down there with guns. If it was any other country, communist Russia or communist China, they would have been wiped out. In South Africa, they enjoy all of these freedoms. The same with AfriForum. AfriForum has built up an organization over years where they have really, mobilized Afrikaner capital and Afrikaner talents and Afrikaner resources to establish their own university, Afrikaans University. So are these people that are, ostracized? Are these people that genocide are committed against? Are these people that, whose property has been taken away? No. And no wonder they are the first to say, but we are not going anywhere, because they know the bread is really buttered here in South Africa. And yes, we have appreciation for all of their contributions, because I live in a similar setting, or I grew up in a similar setting where our church, the Moravian Church, owns the land, where the Khoi people or the, people with Khoi backgrounds, with slave backgrounds, with European backgrounds, the mixed people have been living for almost 300 years. The missionary station where my parents grew up has been in existence for 200 years. So in South Africa, you have very sort of exclusive areas where colored people stay, where white people stay, where black people stay. And nobody has ever, besides the few extremist noisemakers, nobody has ever bothered to go and say, but this must stop, or this is wrong. And yes, we remain, worried about racism rearing its ugly head, but it is not just limited to white people. There are black people, there are colored people that display those same tendencies.
Look at Julius Marema with some of his rhetoric, and of course uttering the famous "Kill the Boer" song as well. There's and we know that Jacob Zil with his MK party has been increasingly supremacist and racist and extremist against South African minorities.
But South Africa, South Africans at large, you can come to South Africa. Yes, we will have crime and things like that. But as I said, there are no guns going off. There are no bombs falling. There are no large or bloodshedding in any way. So this is nonsense that South Africa is on the brink of a civil war. South Africans are peace-loving. South Africans stand united behind our national constitution. And yes, South Africa stands united behind the government of national unity. All that I want to appeal to right-wing people. I don't have qualms with your ideologies, but don't go out there and at the end of the day undermine South Africa by spreading falsehoods, by go and tell the whole world how bad South Africa is. You've been benefiting from South Africa. If you just take agriculture, since 1994, when we entered the democratic world, I worked in agriculture. I know the facts and the figures. South African white farmers have been grown by leaps and bounds. Exports to the rest of the world has grown by leaps and bounds. The kind of wealth that has been created in the agriculture is second to none, due to the fact that they were allowed to become more innovative. They were allowed to really up their game, and they had the freedom to do so. So all that we are saying is, and I've been very involved in many plans that were written, let us see how do we transfer expertise also from white farmers to black farmers. And I've just been in a meeting this morning where we are discussing how do we ensure that black farmers get the necessary support, because you cannot have a dual system that is based on inequality. And that's what we should face as South Africans, work together as opposed to go out and spread false rumors. And then you have a president that should be the president of one of the biggest democracies in the world, the president of the free world, that do not acquaint themselves with the facts and go out and cause even more division, more disruption, and more economic turmoil for not only for South Africa, but for the rest of the world.
Christo van der Rheede, thank you very much for your time.
It's always a pleasure, and please come and visit us, and please engage with us so that you also get various other perspectives. I'm not saying that I'm always right, but at least you can get, truth from my mouth. I don't sit and lie, and I will never discount my country and my people.
Christo van der Rheede, Executive Director of the FW de Klerk Foundation there. And that's Firstline for now. I'm Daniel Pizarro. Thank you so much for your company. Have a great weekend, and I hope to see you soon. Good night.